Hello, YouTube people. I am Lolly here with another random rant. I wanted to talk about projection. And so, the term that, the definition of it that I'm using is basically when someone is dealing with something internal, like an insecurity or a trauma, and they take that and they put their own personal bias onto their perception of another person or situation. They are projecting what's from the inside out. You can think of this as those old school projectors. I don't know. Maybe not kids today, but back in my day, we used to have those old school overhead projectors, and it was like this box, and it had a little like light, and it would like project the image that you would put like a piece of paper on the like top part of the box, and it would show it on this on like a whiteboard or chalkboard or something. So similarly, projection in social circumstances is when people do that with their own emotions, their own biases, their own flaws, and they take what they see in themselves and they put it onto someone else, or even just like I said, even just the situation in general. And so projection can often be used by people with narcissistic personality disorder, but I want to make it very clear that projection is something that every human being has done at least once. And it's not innately bad. In a way, it's kind of like us trying to connect with another person by thinking that we're similar, right? The problem of projection comes when we hold fast stronger to our own beliefs of what someone is rather than what they're telling us or what they're showing us they are. So projection can be, I think a lot of people think of like, oh, when someone is insecure about their looks or something, they'll call people ugly. But similarly, projection can also be, you're someone who is a kind of a people pleaser and you will bend over backwards for folks. And so you think that other people are going to be like that too. But they're not. I mean, some will, obviously. People are people pleasers at times. But you're putting your own biases on what another person might be before your own. So like when you are that kind of like people pleaser, which I think a lot of people who grew up in toxic narcissistic homes, or homes where their parent narcissistically abused them, they can often become very people pleasery. A lot of times being emotionally abused in childhood can make people more empathetic towards the feelings of others and more considerate, in maybe ways that other people aren't, just because they have been through a lot. And so, for myself at least, I am coming to the realization that I did a lot of projection on people, but it wasn't bad things. It was good things. I thought that they would be that people would have the same heart as me, that people wouldn't have ulterior motives and so for a very long time. And it's naive. It really is. Projection is naive in itself, but that even though it was like good things that I was projecting onto people, it was not good for me because I was not being able to look at reality fully. And time again, people would show me with their actions that they're not the same person that I am. We don't have the same morals or values, or we don't treat humans with the same amount of respect, and I would ignore it to project my own personality onto them. And that's not, like I said, it's not healthy. It puts you in a lot of damaging situations because it's semi-delusional in a way, projection is. And like, obviously, there is a whole spectrum of projection, right? There's that you can project positive or negative things onto people. You can do it a little bit and you can do it a lot of it. You can change your mind afterwards because a little bit of projection is kind of just normal. It's kind of how we, with a sense of ego and identity, how we kind of find people that like we might want to actually get to know and share our lives with and stuff, because when we see someone maybe that's dressed similarly to us, we think, oh well, maybe if they're punk, maybe they like the same music as us, or if they look, maybe they're into the same makeup artist. We're making these like judgments and projections. But typically in a healthy way, when we do project onto people, we are willing to amend those projections and recognize them, call them into awareness that that was our bias, and accept people for who they really are, right? Especially when they tell us who they are through their words and actions, being able to remove our projections off of them and see them for what they truly are. With, I think, recognizing projection on a personal level, there is a certain amount of shame, embarrassment, and that comes with that, because we have this awareness that what we believe to be true was not reality. It was tainted with our own bias. And to be perfectly honest, every single truth that you learn, everything you learn in life is going to be a little tainted with your own bias, right? I find that for myself going through this process, because that was my initial knee-jerk reaction, was to feel shame, and when I realized that I had been projecting on people and been completely unaware, even though I knew what projection was, right? And it can be that way as well. So I felt embarrassed, and I felt hypocritical, I guess. But I think the way that we work through that is by I do think a certain level of shame for projection is necessary so that it can tell us hey, this didn't make you feel good. It must not be very good or healthy, right? And so in shame in the right amount can motivate us to want to be better. And so that's kind of what I allowed it to do for me, rather than sitting in the shame for longer than I needed to, spiraling into it, feeling depths of it that I really didn't need to feel for becoming aware of parts of myself that were just not beautiful and perfect, right? We all have those parts. So like I was saying, I think the way we combat that shame after we've felt enough of it is to take a step back and kind of flip the perspective, right? And so instead of being ashamed of your own ignorance, instead becoming proud and grateful for your awareness. Because even though you were that way, clearly having the awareness now means you now have the power to change. That's inspiring, And so once we can, look with hindsight and see where was I projecting my own biases onto the situation or the person, we can feel that shame, and then we can use it to motivate us to, in the next similar situation, or even with that same person, or whatever, we can think before we project, and before we put all our bias all over it, our opinion or our interpretation even of the situation, and we can say, wait, okay, I remember last time I projected a little bit of my own insecurities onto that, and the other people that were in the situation didn't actually feel that way. So when I find myself in that situation again, I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna maybe bite my tongue, or I'm maybe gonna try to listen more to the people that are actually in the situation rather than listening to my own preconceived notions. And I think the goal there is to, rather than having to use hindsight to go back and recognize projection, is to kind of catch it when it's happening. And so I actually was able to utilize this today, which is why I wanted to share it. I don't even remember what exactly it was I was thinking about, but I was thinking about something, and it was getting me really heated, and I realized that I was projecting my own trauma with the subject of this scenario, situation, whatever. I was projecting my own trauma onto these people, and when they weren't responding in the ways that I would respond, it was unnerving, because I had put so much unconscious bias into what I expected their interpretation of the situation to be based on what mine was. But that's projection. And so what I did, before I recognized really it was projection, I felt myself getting heated, and I was like, okay, well, wait, why am I feeling this way? This doesn't involve me. I'm not part of this. Why am I getting so amped about some bullshit that doesn't even really matter? And I asked myself, I was like, am I projecting my own issues onto this? And I kind of sat and thought for a while with it, and it was very uncomfortable. Of course, my initial thoughts no. Am I projecting? No, you could never. You have to like kind of fight that little voice that wants to protect your fragile ego and be like, no, 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 no. Okay, I know you're saying no, but like, let's just really look at it. And like I said, it's uncomfortable and it's a little annoying, basically. Like I just annoy myself all the time, but um, just like I was able to stop and realize like one, I don't want to feel these emotions, so let me pick something else to think about, and two, like let me figure out where these emotions are coming from, so I don't end up here again, not knowing like what path I took. So yeah, I realized that like I was projecting my own traumatic interpretation of a situation that others may not have necessarily interpreted as traumatic or as life-changing. So I think that is like super helpful, and we get there by not stigmatizing projection and just talking openly about it, because I don't really think any human is innocent in this case, and it's not necessarily innately a bad thing to project your own likeness onto a situation. That is oftentimes where connection starts off, the jumping off point, when we empathize with a situation, when we see ourselves and other people, that is kind of like a spark for connection oftentimes, because we feel more comfortable and like more in tune with people when we think that they're more like us, right? Because we feel out of tune with people who we think are the opposite of us. At least I do. But yeah, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about my own understanding, I guess, and like journey of understanding of projection, which is something that I've like kind of quasi understood and known, for a while, but didn't really make the personal connection for a long time. Didn't project that I would, be the kind of person that would project onto myself. Bias, heck of a thing. Ego, id, whatever. It's all, it makes life so complicated, but infinitely varied. So that's kind of what life wanted, right? Is just all the options. It only happens when we're all separate, but with the separation can come things like projection. And so I think just really mindfulness of it, not shaming yourself too hard for it. I'm not saying shame yourself every time you catch yourself projecting, but I think really that initial time that you really, that it sinks in and hits you on like a personal level, like, oh my God, I have projected my own biases onto people. Like really like allowing yourself to feel the emotional effects of coming to awareness of that, but then having the gratitude for the awareness so that you can do better next time. And I mean, I'm sure I will probably be guilty of projection at some other point in my life, though I will try to do it less. I am still human, and so are all of you. And if you're an alien, fucking tell me, get me out of this planet. But, so yeah, we should all not be so hard on ourselves, not so quick to judge and project negativity onto the act of projection, because it's kind of just like a base, like building block of connection. And I know that's probably like a super weird take on projection, but I really think like getting rid of like negative stigmas on different issues that humans may have in communicating or truly genuinely connecting in a healthy way, I don't think anything bad will happen if we just keep talking about it in a neutral kind of way, obviously with the understanding that certain things are not healthy, and that is why they shouldn't be continued, right? But it doesn't make you a bad person if you've projected onto people. It doesn't make you a bad person to have projected. Where that gets a little gray, where people do get that stereotype of, yeah, it makes you a bad person, is the kind of people that they are so stuck in their projections that even when given proof or evidence of reality being different than what they had an opinion or bias of, they won't even listen. They stick to it. They keep going, and they're just dead set on that they're the one that's right, whether they're in the situation or not. And that's where it gets really toxic and unhealthy, not only for the individual, but for everyone around them, really. And so, like like I said, let's just talk about this kind of stuff that happens without shame about it, because we're not going to change it if we get stuck in shame. Like I said, a little bit of shame is necessary, and it's like a catalyst, but shame is kind of like gasoline, right? Like you need just the right amount put into the mechanics of your car for it to run. But if you douse the car in gasoline, it's going to catch fire. And same with you, if you douse yourself in shame and guilt and embarrassment, you're gonna fucking be on fire. Like, and it's not gonna be fine, like the little dog meme. But yeah, just in small doses, in the right amount, like these things that we typically think of as like negative emotions, like shame and guilt and embarrassment, in small doses, they can actually be very healthy and very motivating and be catalysts for transformation and change within us. So yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. If anyone wants to share their views or opinions, even if they contrast with mine, I would love to hear them. I hope everyone has a good night and take it easy.